It is Financial Friday, 3 o'clock. Well, actually, it's 3:03. Just so we sorry about being late. Technical difficulties. I'm sure you all understand in the world of tech and AI, of course. But we are here and ready to spread knowledge. I'm obviously here with my boy Glenn. What's up, bro?
What's going on, Cam? How you
Yeah,
doing, brother?
yeah, my boy. I know we just like this is the most I've seen him all week. We like spent all yesterday together.
Oh, yeah, it's been a productive week, man.
It really has. So we have some good topics for you guys today. Kind of go down a couple of rabbit holes as far as some of the things that honestly is standard for a lot of people in the way that they think. But as per the usual, share, like, make sure you subscribe to the events when we post them on our Facebooks, Instagrams, YouTubes, LinkedIn's every Friday, 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We'll be out here rocking with you guys. So, for the first article, let me pull it up for you guys.
Yeah. And while you pull it up, guys, just to let you guys know, this is for informational purposes only. While we are licensed in the financial industry, again, we want you to do, and we encourage you to do your own research based off of these topics. We want to feed you. We want to put information on the table so that you can have these conversations with your family, have this conversation with your circle of influence. So,
Yep. Great disclaimer. Per the That's why he's my guy. So this week, as you guys know, if you don't know, the way that we run this show is myself, Jeremiah, who is missed very much today. We and Glenn, we swap who's going to pick the stories each week. That way, it gives us an opportunity to kind of talk about the things that maybe we see in the market or we think might be valuable for you guys. That way, the information is always kind of flowing rather than always being somewhat of the same topics and things like that. So this week was my turn. I wasn't on last week, so it's nice. And so the first one I picked was from Market Watch, and it said many CDs are paying way more than they used to. Think upwards of 4 to 4.5%. But should you take one? And so the reason I chose this article was because, there are a lot of standard things that people are taught when it comes to how to, grow their money or protect their money and things like that. CDs, certified deposits, those have always been kind of one of those like, oh, if you have the money to get a CD, life is good and life is going to be grand. And so, but that's changed a lot over the years. So, recently, so right now you're seeing rates that are the highest in 15 years, right? So that doesn't mean that they're the highest they've ever been, though. So it's just the highest they've ever been in the last 15 years. But I will tell you, in the last 15 years, that's all I've still heard is CDs, CDs, CDs. And so I thought it was important to say, there are a lot of things to consider when you're looking at protecting, growing, or saving your money, right? And that's what we like to talk about is how do we educate the masses on these things? So one of the things that the articles are really kind of talking about is right now is a good time for certified deposits, right? Now, I, as a conspiracy theorist, the reason why I think that CDs are doing well, if you think about it, as far as second, third order effects is because they're charging higher interest rates. They can give you 4% because they're charging the average person, what, 8%, 7% for a home loan?
right.
So, like, of course they can give you more. And that's the thing is it's like, anything that's honestly regulated by the banks, in my opinion, for the most part, is never usually good for the common masses, right? Banks are publicly traded and all types of things. They're not mutual companies. So one of the things to consider is that they're going to do what's best for their bottom line. They're not always necessarily going to do what's best for the average consumer, right? And that's one of the things that I think we like to really make people understand is that you can really take charge of your financial future if you understand that research is a huge part of it, and ultimately banks aren't the only way to do that.
That is truth.
So what do you think, Glenn?
Yeah, well, first, real quick, I want to give a shout out to Akbar. I appreciate you tuning in, man. I see you. I see you tuned in. When I first read this, it kind of took me back. Now I'm gonna date myself a little bit. I remember when I left Philly back in 2000, and I joined the military. And I remember when I would walk into the banks that were on the military bases,
Yep.
and they always have these big billboards that said, invest in CDs, earn 3%, earn 3%, right? And so at 17, I seen these signs, but it was just like, but you can't touch your money for 8 months. You can't touch your money for 3 years.
Facts.
And I was just like, nah, I want to always touch my money. Again, I wasn't at the time. I wasn't educated in finances, right? The only thing I knew about was a savings account, and I stepped foot in there to open up a savings account. And while the CD brochure or the flyer kind of caught my interest, I stayed away from it for a long time.
Yeah.
So when I started reading when I read the headline and started reading the first paragraph, it took me back to that moment. But the reason why it is because a lot of people in my community, we're not educated on the importance of diversifying your funds, right? We're not educated on on different vehicles of how your money can be saved, how it can still grow, in all these different ways, right? And so I appreciated this article because, again, it took me back to that space, and it made me go back and think like, hey, if there's nothing else, I want to make sure that as I'm raising my home, that I'm educating my boys and that they understand. Well, I guess my family now. I have a baby girl, as you know. But so anyway, as I was reading through it, it was again the interest rate. You talk about 4% to 4.75%, right? With the CDs, depending on the research that you're doing, right? And so, with that being said, I was like, yeah, while that's pretty cool. Like, again, we were looking at, during the pandemic, I think September, October, where the interest rate were 8 point, I'm sorry, they were 9.1%, right? As far as inflation. And so, like I said, it was so many thoughts going through my mind regarding this. Something that stood out to me further down in the paragraph, it talked about the latest rates of returns on CDs, how the average rate paid 1.8%, to 2.65. And this, again, as far as the CD itself, is just another way to diversify your portfolio.
Yeah.
Right. And so one of the things I do want to highlight, and it mentioned in this article as well, if you're looking at different ways, you want to make sure that you're shopping around, right?
Yep.
You want to make sure that you're shopping around for the best yielding CDs, and you want to make sure that you also are getting it directly from a federally insured bank or a credit union.
Yeah.
And here was probably the most important thing in that article that really stood out to me. Alongside of that was the withdrawal fees.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I want, and I know we've, me, you, and Rico, we've talked about withdrawal fees a lot.
Yeah.
With just other products and different things like that. Guys, if you're listening in, that is one thing to take away. Whether you're investing in a CD, whatever vehicle you're putting money in or diversifying your money into, you want to know. One of the things you want to know is, what is the withdrawal fee? Is there a penalty? Penalty fee? And so, yeah, man, that was good. And I know it gave some tips at the end as far as people are not being aware as far as emergency funds, making sure that you set yourself up and establish an emergency fund. And then at the very end, it talked about, hey, it only makes sense to put your money in a CD if you're able to keep it into there until it reaches its maturity.
Correct.
So, but yeah, man, I liked it because, like I said, it took me back to that 17-year-old Glenn,
Airman Davis,
stepping into the bank. Yeah. Stepping into the bank. And like I said, just like the 17-year-old Glenn, there are many people, in similar communities that they don't know what a CD is. They don't know how it works. They don't know, there's a lot of don't knows. And so I appreciate you highlighting this article, man, so we can talk to our community with it.
Oh yeah. And no, those are all solid points, bro. And this is one of those big things that you have to make sure you're doing your research. You have to make sure you're taking everything into account, and don't understand you're not in it alone, right? There's so many resources out there. And that's what we would just want to be, one of those other resources as well, which is why we do what we do. So for our second article,
yeah, man. Guys, if you are rewatching this, if you're currently online, if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. We would love to have an open dialogue with you guys.
Oh yeah. and we'll put it up here. We've had some pretty good questions along the way.
Yeah.
When we were talking about cryptos before, when we were talking
Right.
about this, the housing market, real estate, things like that. Ask what you can, and honestly, if we can't answer it now, we'll get back to you. And we love the conversation.
And we noticed that a lot of our followers too, obviously specifically Facebook, they are very well versed in the, as far as with the stocks and the crypto and just in the market in general. Feel free to throw y'all thoughts in here as well, man. Like we're firm believers of iron sharper than iron, but alongside of that, as far as this is something that I always say to my team, like financial education changes situations. So,
yep.
All right, brother. What we got?
So the second one I chose was the Fed is gearing up for a longer than expected inflation fight. So this is crazy. So I chose this article this morning to really highlight, because as with the Fed just raised another 50 basis points, right? And so it's already affecting. So I had a friend of mine who I was talking to, and it's already affecting his situation, because he was looking at buying multifamily homes and things of that nature, was dang near like locked in, found a property, and then the Fed was like, oh, never mind, whoop, raised it, and now he can't afford it, now he can't do it anymore. And so and it's one of those things where a lot of people, I don't think, know how much that correlates to like all those things, right? So for instance, excuse me, we're talking about, the interest rate that you're going to gain on a CD, but you can't buy a house.
Right.
So, yeah, great. Like that's the reason why. And ultimately the banks know that, that's why they're doing that. They're like, oh, we've made it very hard for people to buy houses, or we are. So in retrospect, inflation will slow down, but people have large pots of money. Oh, where do we want people to put that money? We want people to put that money in the bank. So so that we can then loan it out and do whatever we want with it, right? So that's why we can give them 4%, because they can't buy a house. They have large sums of money. They got to put it somewhere. Inflation is ridiculous. We can do 4%, but it's because we're handing it out for 12%.
Hey, Kim, can you re-say that, man? I feel like our community need to know that, man.
That, man, look, you can't buy a house because it's too expensive. You got a large pot of money. Where are you going to put your money? You're going to put it in the bank, so they give you 4%, so they can lend it out for 12. But that being said, that was one of the things that I think a lot of people had hoped that the inflation rates was going to slow down, right? Like, because we saw it starting to cool, like just a little bit. So that gave people hope that it was going to continue that curve. Well, sorry, Brad, the curve ain't continuing. And so that's one of the reasons, I decided I wanted to pick this article, and it said, so one of the parts of the article says the comments came as the Fed's preferred measure of inflation, the personal consumption expenditures index, unexpectedly accelerated, rising 5.4% last month on an annual basis. Excluding volatile food and energy prices, the inflation gauge rose 4.7%, both marking pickups after several months of decline. And so this is like a testament, I think, unfortunately, to like the American society as a whole, right? Like, as soon as somebody tells us like things are getting better, we think things are better. so as soon as everyone thought that things were better, they just start spending money, or like, all these things all of a sudden. They're like, "Whoa, you weren't supposed to be spending money at this time." We wanted you to spend money, but we wanted you to be smart about it. And we were like, oh, we thought things were cooling down.
Right. Yeah.
So, at least that's like my interpretation.
Yeah. So I want to kind of add to that, man. When I was reading in that article, that's the picture of Susan Collins, right?
I believe so. Yes.
Gotcha. So for those that don't know,
this is Loretta Mester, president and CDO of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland.
Gotcha. So there was another. There was another statement in the article from Susan Collins, who's the Boston Fed president, right? But she was saying that, hey, inflation is still too high and the Feds have more work to do, right? And it was just like, so we've been talking about this almost every Friday for the last 3 months, I think people have to realize that based off of her statement, inflation, yes, it is still too high, and yes, the Feds do have work to do, but this is not going to be an overnight correction. This is not going to be an overnight success story, and I think that obviously there's so many entities, there's so many pieces when it comes to our economy. It's important for us to realize that it's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, right? It's going to continue. We're going to continue to see the ups and downs. And so, if you don't have patience, if you you're going to have to tap into that reserve tank of patience. Unfortunately, in 2023, there was another piece Jefferson had said. It was about the workforce, right? So obviously, employers. So something we talked about the other day, or one of the other Fridays, was as far as employers adding 517,000 jobs just in the month of January.
Mhm.
However, the unemployment rate still fell 3.4%,
Mm.
right? And so in that same piece, Jefferson had also said a limited supply of workers for jobs needed, which has pushed wages, suggests inflation may cool slowly. I mean,
Yeah.
again, as far as that slow pace, it's almost like a marathon. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? This isn't a sprint. These conversations, it's not about it being a sprint. Like, yes, a lot of people are impacted significantly because of what the pandemic has done, what inflation is doing, what our economy is doing, and a lot of the conversations being had. But like I said, this is strap up, guys. I said that last Friday. Strap up. It's going to be a very, very interesting ride, and not only strap up, make sure that you're staying in the loop on what's going on in the economy, man, because it's not only affecting the banks, it's not only affecting your money, it's affecting, what I'm saying, like your city is affecting your household, and so
Mhm.
stay educated.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I looked at my pay stub, what is it, today, and I was like, I didn't even realize I got a raise because everything's just like so expensive. Like,
Yeah,
like I didn't even make a dent, right? And
right.
because of whatever's going on. So one of the things, so Big Mike says many people are looking for better assets to put their money in, and precious metals are a good option. Let's talk about it.
Mhm.
So I'm a firm believer in precious metals. I got a lot of people in my circle who believe in precious metals. So I invest in precious metals as well because at the end of the day, that is one of the only things on earth that you cannot make more of. Right. So it's
Mhm.
the value of it is is going nowhere. Other things, the value it fluctuates because it's based off of, do we manufacture it fast enough, do we not manufacture it fast enough, things of that nature. And so now one of the interesting things though is that when you're investing in precious metals, it's, do you actually have control of that precious metal asset that you're investing in, or is it simply like an ETF? Like, are you simply just investing in the stock? And I will say right now, currently, I'm investing in more so just like the ETFs. But my plan coming here in the future is I plan on actually getting it to where like I got gold bars. You feel me? I'm trading them for land
Yes.
back in the 1800s. And
Mhm.
so it really just depends on kind of what your salt is. And but yeah, so as far as precious metal is concerned, that's definitely a conversation like to be had for the value that they bring, you
For
know.
sure, a
Mhm.
and even more, like, again, that's one of those topics that this circle of friends should continue having and talking about that and educating that, so same thing, Cam, you and I have similar circles, and
You
they're
don't
also
say.
intermingled and intertwined, but yeah, same thing. I have a handful of folks within my circle that's their lane, right? And so fortunately for me, I'm always, willing to learn and be educated on different things, especially when it comes to money, when it comes to investments. Because one of my personal goals is actually I want each one of my kids to have a gold bar, right?
Yeah.
And so, in addition to many other things, and getting them to understand the value in that. So, yeah, that was a good question. I like that,
Mhm.
Mike. Lumpkin. Appreciate you tuning in.
Yep. And he also said also something big is as far as the dollar will be departing us. So the dollar's not going anywhere, but the petrodollar is for sure.
Mm,
Obviously, because there are deals being made in the background to where the U.S. dollar is no longer going to be the standard currency when it comes to trading oil or petroleum products, right? And that's obviously we've talked about that before. Our man Rico still tapping in.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we miss
The
you.
life of a CEO.
Yeah.
Shout out to Rico.
So Kitco, that is one of the. I think that's another platform that you can use to look at. I'm guessing precious metals because that's what we were talking about whenever Rico decided to drop that into the chat, Jeremiah. So other than that, we appreciate you, brother. So
Yeah,
let's go
yeah.
on to article number 3.
So real quick, while you're bringing that up, as far as Kitco guys, if you are listening in or re-listening, go to kitco.com. So based off of what Rico kind of put in the chat, it's kitco.com. kitco.com.
Mm-hmm.
I almost felt like a radio host doing that. I need Kitco to give me a cut.
If you use the code Financial Friday, you will get no discounts, but maybe they'll give us something that enough people do it.
Hey, I like that plug.
They were like, "Hey, did you guys notice there was an uptick of people typing in Financial Friday on the discount code thing?" So the last article I chose because this is one that myself, Glenn, Jeremiah, we talked to a lot of people about, and something that we're very big on, especially in our communities, with me and Glenn being prior military, things of that nature, is there's always this question of how much money do I need to retire? Right? And I think when we were kids, right, it was always like $1 million. Like I could retire once I have $1 million. And so
inflation clearly wasn't a factor.
Inflation let us down on that one. And so, so that being said, that's something I know that I talk to my clients, the people that I talk to about, Glenn talks to his people about, Jeremiah talks to his people about is, not only when do you plan on retiring, but how much money are you personally going to need in retirement? Because those numbers stack up quick when you think about it, right? So for instance, I'll give you guys one of my numbers, right? So, me and my fiance talked and I said, I think we could honestly do perfectly fine off $70,000 a year. Like we don't need much more, kids will be out the house, we'll be old. We don't need much more than that.
Yeah.
To survive for 25 years, we would need $2.3 million.
At just $70,000 a year, right?
At $70,000 a year. Yeah. At the age of, if we retired at the age of 65.
Yeah, I wanted people to take note of that.
Yeah, so just 70,000. That just straight up, just $70,000 a year, $2.3 million at the age of 65 to last us 25 years. Now, obviously, that is if we, took all of our money out of an account and it was literally just sitting in a whatever account.
Right.
But at the same time, that's 2.3 million in today's dollars.
Right.
I'm going to be 30 years older then at that point, right? So at that point, what is it actually like? $7 million, like $8 million, right? Yeah. So that was something I thought that, I really liked about this article is it really kind of pointed that out is that, $5 million could retire you at the age of 55 today while while taking out $100,000 a year.
Yes.
And one of the things that I also like to talk about is it's not just about dollar amounts when it comes to money. It's about the tax liabilities as well, right? Everybody wants to retire with all this money. Understand that once you don't have any money coming in, that doesn't just mean you don't just pay taxes on it because you have money still. You still have money coming in. It's just now it's from like a savings and things of that nature, and so or 401ks, things like that. And so I really enjoyed this article because it kind of broke down the things that people to consider when they're in retirement, right? So it talked about healthcare costs. It talked about, do you have dependents, right? Are you going to be in a nursing home? Like, all those things, do you want to travel? Like all those types of things have to be considered when you're talking about that number. Right. So that's why I chose it because it was really less for just the article and honestly more for like the headline straight up is, can I retire at 55 with $5 million? Because people have that dream of retiring, but they don't run the numbers. They're just,
Right.
they're working on the dollar and a wish, right?
Yeah. The one of the main reasons you chose this article is one of the main reasons I'm glad that we've created this platform for the community.
Yeah.
And I know we only got 2 minutes, so guys, stick with me, right? Give me an extra 60 seconds, guys. We try to stay 30 minutes or less, but I want to say this, right? The title of the article is "Can I Retire at 55 with $5 million?" I really want people to pause for a second and ask yourself the question: when I retire, blank, right? When I retire, how much money will I need for myself, my wife, or whoever, right? But I will. My challenge to the folks listening to this call or listening to this live is to, if you're in a relationship, if you're married, if you're whatever, right, have a conversation with your family and really talk about the numbers of what you think that you will need at the age of retirement. So whether that's 55, 60, 65, right? So that's my personal challenge to each and every one of you guys, because it's important. This is, again, these are conversations that we don't think about until it's too late, right? And so here it is. I've retired from the military, but I'm still, well, now I'm doing the thing I absolutely still love to do. But even still, had I known this information 20 years ago, this, like, how much more of a head start would we be in given the information that we actually know, right? So the question of you need to ask yourself is, how much money will I need annually, right? There's a rule of thumb in the article. It mentioned a rule of thumb, and it said, hey, shoot for 8 times your annual income and savings by the time that you retire, right? And so that's generally a rule of thumb. So for example, if you make $100,000, you times that by 8, you should at least have that. And then something else that was very interesting, while I feel like I'm still fairly healthy at my retirement age, right? At my age, I think that's something that we don't talk about enough as well. That was in this article. It said, don't forget to plan for healthcare costs.
Yes.
Especially if you plan on retiring before the age of 65, and obviously you got Medicare, but sometimes that's not enough, right? So anyway, I wanted to, like I said, I wanted people to pause for a moment to ask themselves the question: when I retire, how much money will I actually need annually to survive?
Facts.
Cool.
That was your 60 seconds.
That was I'm right on time too. I love
Bing. It. That's why he's my guy. All right. So no, great. Honestly, great question. That's why I chose the article, because I knew that you would know the whole point I chose it and what we were trying to kind of project as far as to our audience and the important message we want to give. So at the end of the day, we do it for you guys. We have this knowledge. We want you guys to have this knowledge. And you guys have knowledge that we don't, and we want that too. So that's why we say comment and, let us know, hit us up, all those things. At the end of the day, it's all about collab over compete. Let's all win together. You feel me? So anyways, that's another Financial Friday. Glenn, appreciate you, my brother. Jeremiah, we miss you, dog. We'll all 3 of us will be back on next week. Other than that, we'll see you guys later, and we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother.